Hey everyone, it's Bob McIntosh from MassHire Lowell Career Center. Today we're going to talk about demystifying your personality and understanding the MBTI type. And I have a special guest here. It's Edythe Richards. And Edythe I've known for a while. I mean, we've been connections on LinkedIn, and she's really my go-to person when I need help in terms of MBTI, or occasionally she'll correct me if I write something wrong. She is truly an expert in the MBTI. And so Edythe is going to answer some questions that I've made up, and then you can ask questions as well. But before I go forward anymore, could you look over to your right where you see a place where you can ask questions and also raise your hand? And would you raise your hand if you can see me and hear us? Awesome, great. Christopher, Michelle, Richard, great, excellent. Edward, thank you. Good. All right, then we are ready to roll.
Okay.
And you know what? I'm not going to read this whole bio of Edythe. Rather, I'm going to let you read it as I go along. But the one thing I really want to emphasize is that Edythe, she's certified in professional resume writing, MBTI, obviously, emotional intelligence. In fact, last year, she did a webinar with us on emotional intelligence, and it was awesome. And so she's really interested in helping baby boomers, veterans, recent college grads, immigrants, pretty much anyone who's looking for work or looking to change their career. So her specialties are resume writing, career transition, emotional intelligence, and we may even talk a little bit about emotional intelligence. But as I said, feel free to ask any questions at any point, and we'll try to get to those questions for you. And I'll let Edythe answer those questions. All right, are we ready to roll? There
I'm
we
ready.
go.
Yeah.
So Edythe, my first question for you is, you are a most knowledgeable person on the Myers-Briggs Personality Type Indicator, I know. Can you explain the extent of your certification in this personality assessment?
Thanks for the kudos, Bob, and thanks for having me here. I got certified in Myers-Briggs a long time ago, and like anyone who gets certified, you have to have graduate coursework in statistics or a master's degree, and you have to go through the 5-day training program and take a test at the end.
Right.
When the master practitioner credential became available a few years ago, I applied for that and I received it, and I was one of the first 50 people in the world to get that credential. So I've used Myers-Briggs quite a lot in my work, mainly with career development, but also with leadership development and team building.
All right, excellent. Yeah, and I went through that 5-day training to get my MBTI qualification, not certification, and it was tough. A number of my colleagues have also done it. It is not an easy thing to go through. So thanks for
Yeah,
explaining that.
yeah. hmm
All right. So the next question is, how do you use your knowledge of the MBTI in your your professional life?
Well, mainly in career development work, I think it's useful not so much in determining whether you're going to be successful in a job, but useful in terms of knowing what work environments, what types of people, and what types of tasks you can naturally gravitate towards. So it's really a good tool for building your own self-awareness and understanding yourself and your own motivations more. And that in turn can help you to find the right fit career.
So do you think that a company should base their hiring decision on a person's MBTI type?
That's a great question, and it's one of the most common questions I hear. My answer is absolutely not,
No.
because Myers-Briggs does not measure. Personality is not a measure of one's ability to do a job.
Mhm.
So we often think of, just as an example, accountants being
Right, right.
ISTJ types or ESTJ types because
Mhm.
they're attuned to the details. But that doesn't mean that you or I could not be a perfectly successful accountant too. So I absolutely believe you should take Myers-Briggs and any type of personality assessment out of the hiring process.
So now, how do you use your knowledge of the MBTI in terms of your professional life? Do you do any workshops, any lectures or conferences?
Yeah, so I do it a lot in career development work in terms of helping people to see what a natural fit for them is, what type of job would be a good fit, for
Mhm.
example, uh, for career exploration.
Yeah.
But it's also a really good tool to use in like a leadership development type setting. So, or to build teams. And you can do that in established workplaces. So it's not just used in career development work, but for people to have better workplace relationships, as part of management initiative. That's one way I'm currently using it.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah.
So what I
Mhm.
want to do now is I want people to raise their hand if they have taken the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator and they know their type.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm seeing a number of hands being raised. Excellent, good. Wow, almost everyone I see is raising their hand. Wow,
Oh,
okay.
that's great.
So for those of you who haven't taken the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, and if you have any questions whatsoever, if you need like clarification in terms of which dichotomy, the dichotomies mean, then you can ask those questions. That is going to be actually be one of the slides that I brought up. Okay, so I see that Christopher's an INTP. That's good. Okay, all right. So the next question is, can you give us a rundown of the extroversion introversion dichotomies?
Hmm. Sure. So the Myers-Briggs is all about preferences.
Mm,
Extroversion and introversion is the most visible of the four dichotomies. So it's often what people think about when they think of Myers-Briggs types. But it doesn't mean I'm an extrovert or I'm an introvert. Really, the correct terminology is I have a preference for extroversion or I'm an extroverted type. Because there are times when we have to use the side that doesn't come most naturally to us. So extroverted types naturally are more attuned to the external world of people and things.
mhm.
They take action. They prefer to take action. Introverted types are more attuned to the inner world of things and ideas, and they get energy from um, interacting amongst themselves and recharging their batteries. So what that might look like in an interaction is an extroverted type might do their thinking while they're speaking. So
Yeah,
speak, think, speak.
right,
With an
right.
introverted type, it can be the opposite. It's think, speak, think. So what that might look like is that they're much more deliberate or quiet in their
Mhm.
interactions.
Yeah, so, when I do workshops, I come across somewhat as more of an extrovert than an introvert. So what you're saying is that we all have the ability to use the traits or characteristic of each type. Is that correct?
Yes, yes, we do. But there is one that comes much more naturally to us. It's
Okay.
easier. Yeah. But and using the opposite, there's always times throughout our lives, throughout our days when we have to, by necessity or not, to use it. And for some people, it can be a little tough to get a handle on that
Right.
because it's not what comes most naturally to us.
So, I've always wondered this. If you tend to be a very extreme introvert, is it harder than to, utilize the traits of an extrovert? Is it harder to, say, go over to the other side on the continuum?
That's a good question, and to me, that comes from an individual person. It depends on the individual person. So there is something on the Myers-Briggs. It's called the Preference Clarity Index, and what some people assume that is that if you got a 30 out of 30 on extroversion scale, for example, that you're the most extreme extrovert, or you're a really strong extrovert. In
Right.
fact, what it really means is that you are strongly clear. You're very clear that that is your preference.
I see. Okay, so it's more in terms of being clear in your preference than
Yes.
really labeling you as an extreme introvert. Okay.
Yeah, and that's not it's not about extremes per se, it's about clarity within yourself. So
Ah,
if
okay.
you, for example, got 30 out of 30 on introversion, that doesn't mean that, you're the biggest hermit who ever lived. It means that you're very clear that introversion is your preference.
I
And that
see.
often comes with age and maturity too.
Okay. We
Yeah.
do have a question, and
Okay.
the question is from Brian, and he asks, do you find that people can change over the course of their career in terms of their?
That's Yeah, can my Myers-Briggs type change? That's actually probably the most common question that I get about Myers-Briggs. Uh, Carl Jung, who originally coined these terms, introversion, extroversion, and the type theory essentially states that you do not change your type over
Mm,
time. You're born as a certain type.
right.
However,
Right. Read
as
that, yeah.
as individuals, we are constantly changing. We're constantly evolving, and
Yeah.
how that type manifests can be dependent on such things as individual circumstances, things that happen to you, your family, your culture, uh, your job. In fact, some people do find that they test as one type at home and a different type at work.
Okay.
And so,
Yes, you're right. Right. Absolutely.
yeah, so I guess my short answer to that question is no, I don't think that people change, but if your type did change, there may be some instances where your type changed over time. My first question is always, are you taking the real Myers-Briggs assessment?
Right. Right.
Because the free online ones are not, statistically reliable or valid.
Like human
And
metrics, that one.
pardon me?
Human metrics.
Oh, human metrics. Yeah, that's a free one. That's one of the
Yeah.
free ones, and it's a really great one, but it is not the real Myers-Briggs.
Right.
Uh, so so that's one point I'd like to make. The other one is that if you do change types, quote unquote, change types over time, I would ask a person, so what was going on at that time in your life when you did come across as an ESFJ, and
Mhm.
what's going on now so that you're coming across as an ISFJ.
Okay.
There might be some circumstances going on that caused you to answer these questions differently at that
Right. Right.
particular time.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. hmm
So Christopher writes, do you find that people can change over the course of their career? No, I'm sorry, that was Brian. So Christopher writes, would the keyword be preference as applied to all the types? I've heard many people claim that the MBTI is not valid because it tries to peg people into one of only 16 subtypes. From my reading, it's always seemed like a general type of these are tendencies. Would this be incorrect?
So if I'm understanding the question here, a lot of critics of type theory state that the validity question here.
Mm-hmm.
But people are also using it mistakenly as a predictive tool. The
Right.
Myers-Briggs is not meant to predict anything. It's not meant to predict any type of career satisfaction, relationship satisfaction,
Great. Yeah.
abilities, nothing like that. And a lot of people, unfortunately, mistakenly use it as such.
True.
Um, so even though there are, based on this way of looking at personality, and there's many different ways of looking at personality, this is just one. This does come up with 16 different Myers-Briggs types, but each person is still a unique person. So, just Bob, within your type, if you don't mind me putting you on the spot here,
No, not at
I
all.
know you'll forgive me for it. So
Yeah.
if you're an ISTP type, that doesn't mean that you're the same as every other ISTP type out there. I mean, you're still a unique individual. You still have unique values and interests that are probably different from other ISTPs.
All right.
So
I
I don't
would,
know. I hope that helps to answer the question.
no, that makes total sense because I
Okay.
think it deals with other types of characteristics than just your personality type. But here's one that I often get, and that is being an introvert synonymous with being shy?
That's another really good question. No, not necessarily. Extroverts can be shy too. So again, this is about your preference for where you're directing your energy. Uh,
Right.
Shyness is not the same as introversion at all. Shyness can be, something related to a fear or a phobia, and introversion is not.
Okay.
Hmm.
Now, that's what I often say in the workshop is I say that, shyness is more of a, would you equate it with anxiety or
Yeah,
that social
yeah.
phobia, right?
It can be a type of anxiety, and
Hmm.
extroverted types can suffer from that too. I mean,
Well, yes, I was
I
going to ask.
was, pardon?
No, I was going to ask, can extroverts or the extroverted types also be shy?
Well, I'm an extroverted type, and I was nominated shyest in my high school class, and
Okay.
that's over 700 people. So
Yeah.
that that's pretty shy. Yeah.
Okay. Lisa has one, but I'm going to wait until we get through this next one. I'm seeing a lot of questions come in right now, and I'm really happy because people feel free, and comfortable in asking questions. So the next one is every blog article you read compares introverts to extroverts. Surely there's more to a person's personality than those two dichotomies, but why do you think these are the two most popular ones?
Because they're the most visible. It's
Mm,
easy to determine whether someone is an introverted type or an extroverted type. It's very easy, even in children, to see that. You can see, think about a child, like think about your children, the ones who were perfectly content to stay in the corner and play with
mm,
their dolls or their blocks, and they're
right,
just fine being by themselves in their own little world. And then there's the other child who's very expressive, who's constantly seeking out attention, who's wants to be with other kids.
okay, yeah,
Yeah.
I get that, absolutely. Um, I thought that my oldest daughter, and I hope she's not watching this, was a little shy, and so I would try to push her into social situations. But come to find out, as a grown woman, she's very expressive. So I
Yeah.
guess, people can change over time.
Yeah. Yeah, and sometimes it's about confidence, or whatever. It could be so many different things going on there too. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
So, and this is, an area in which you've corrected me, but it seems that when people write about introverts and extroverts, they peg them into this sort of mold that is very, very similar and express the same over time. Introverts, for instance, prefer to write as opposed to speak in terms of communication. So that doesn't necessarily apply to everyone, though, does it?
I don't think so. I mean, there's times that I love to talk, and there's other times I really prefer to write. So it comes down to where the person, again, if you're looking at Myers-Briggs type, it's where they're directing their energy.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, and to that point, you're a very good writer as well as a great speaker. And for those of you who are out there, at the end of this presentation, you're going to see a link to Edythe's website, as well as a link to the podcast which she's produced. So she's produced over 62 podcasts that are on her site, one a week. So she's been very consistent with that, very prolific. So I want to get to another question, and Lisa asked, how familiar are you with the predictive index test? How does it compare to MBTI? I find a lot of companies use the PI as a tool.
I have heard of predictive index, but I don't want to I don't want to probably go down that path because I'm not
Right.
the most well-versed person with that. Yeah. Uh, yeah, it's a lot of companies, in general, when they're trying to hire people, they of course they really do want to try to get the best candidate and all that. Everybody does, so they're going to
Sure,
try to
sure.
get
Yeah.
use whatever tool they can to extract that information, for better or for worse.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I
Yeah.
want to stick one more in here, and Lori writes, you mentioned people can have different types at work and at home. Are there different tests to measure personal versus professional personality?
Not with the Myers-Briggs. Usually what I suggest people do who want to take the Myers-Briggs is to take the assessment at home when you're alone at home,
Okay.
in a comfortable space, when you're kind of in a neutral frame of mind, and that's just to get the best results.
Mm-hmm.
But even more important than that is to have a professional facilitator or someone who understands it and can relate the content to you as the user, to your needs. That's very important, because it's easy to just go somewhere and just say, okay, well, you're an ESTP type, whatever.
Right.
But to have that conversation with an administrator who can understand what that means to you at this time in your life, that's what's invaluable about taking the assessment, in my opinion.
Now, in terms of an assessment for professional life, would DISC be a good one in your opinion?
Yeah, DISC is it's another really good assessment as well. It's measuring personality, and they use a slightly different scale than Myers-Briggs does. There is some correlation with DISC,
Mm-hmm.
but really it's two different scales.
Okay, very good. All
Mm-hmm.
right. So the next one is, most people don't know their personality consists of 4 dichotomies or factors. Would you quickly run through some of them?
Yes, so we've talked about introversion and extroversion. The second letter is about how you retrieve information.
Mm-hmm.
So sensing types, or S types, tend to get information through their 5 senses, whatever you see, hear, taste, touch, and smell, whatever
Mm-hmm.
is visible to the sensory information. So they're attuned to hard data. They're going to gravitate towards facts and figures. There's not going to be much reading into what they're saying. No double entendres, no hidden meanings, things like that. What you see is what you get. With intuitive types, so N is for intuition.
Mm-hmm.
An intuitive type is more interested in a vision for the future, imagining what could be, brainstorming ideas, things like that. So that's the second dichotomy, is how you obtain information. Do you prefer to get it through sensing or intuition?
So
And
in terms of those dichotomies, which of the 2 is most prevalent in the world or the U.S.?
yeah, great question. So we live in a very sensing world. So 75% of the population, I back up a minute. U.S. and U.K. population is sensing, prefers sensing.
Okay.
Intuitives are only 25% of the population. Now, this one, to me, this is a very important dichotomy, the S versus N, because you give an object to a sensing type and an intuitive type, and they both look at it, and they're both going to describe it in different ways. So essentially, they're seeing the same object, but they're looking at very different information, and they're extracting different information from that. So that has a lot of implications for careers. In some career areas, you're going to see an overrepresentation of each type. Example, higher education. In our society, higher education, the higher you go, the more theoretical education becomes. It's more focused on theories. So professors, you're going to have more professors who are intuitive. And this is well documented. Sensing types, overrepresented in fields like accounting, and the military, which are highly sensory.
All right.
Yeah, so that's the second dichotomy. The third dichotomy is thinking and feeling. So this is how we make decisions based on the information we receive. So thinking types tend to focus on logical and objective decision making, while feeling types base decisions primarily on how they affect people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So. So yeah, and then we get to the fourth dichotomy, which is J, judging, and P, perceiving. So this is about how we prefer to organize our lifestyles or our lifestyle orientation. J types, judging types, tend to prefer a planned, orderly, and more methodical approach to life, while perceiving types tend to be more adaptable and spontaneous and flexible.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So this brings me back to the question that I believe it was Lisa asked in terms of the various assessments for personal and professional life. So what if, for instance, on your MBTI assessment, you come out as a perceiver or someone who prefers perceiving?
Mm-hmm.
Can a perceiver be organized, or is that person just doomed to disorganization?
They're doomed to disorganization. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
That's a really great example of what we don't want to do with Myers-Briggs, which is to typecast people and make
Right.
assumptions
Right.
based on what their type is. So yes, there are many perceiving types who are said to be disorganized, or
Mhm.
they kind of wait till the last minute. They're procrastinators, things like that. But there are other perceivers who have taken active measures to work on those areas, and
Mhm.
so much so that they often come across as a judging type.
Okay.
So, and again, that can work both ways.
But does that take more effort for the perceiver to
Yeah,
do
because
some like
it's
assessment?
not natural. It's not natural.
Ah,
One exercise I like to do to determine whether you're a judging type or perceiving type is lists. So, are you
nice.
a natural? Do you naturally make lists?
Not me.
No, and you're shaking your head no.
Yeah. No, I
um,
don't.
Most perceiving types don't naturally make lists. It's more, if they do, they've learned the benefit of doing that. It's a learned behavior.
Right.
Whereas judging types, they often live by their lists.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
And I think I keep switching these slides here. I think I asked you at one point, which of the dichotomies do you think are the most important in terms of personality and behavior? What did you say to me about that?
Well, I think really it could be any of them.
Mhm.
It just could be the way the dichotomies work together, and it also depends on the person. Like just a lot of people think about, when they get used to type theory, they think about, oh, I'm this type, and so I really want to be in a relationship with this type of person. But
Oh, yeah.
the Myers-Briggs, it doesn't measure something like integrity and whether somebody's a good person or not,
Mhm.
whether there's attraction there, things like that. So we kind of have to be careful about how the assumptions that we make on someone because of their type. But with that said, you can kind of glean where, if there's a couple who has if you're, for example, in my case, so I'm an ENFP type,
Mhm.
and my significant other is an ISFJ type.
Mhm.
So with this pairing, we can, get an idea of where potential pitfalls in that relationship are.
Right,
Um,
right.
in my case, for example, yeah, I'm kind of a disorganized person. I admit it,
Mhm.
and he is not. So that
Right, right.
is a little bit of a point of contention between us.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So when some people take the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, they answer how they would respond at work. Why do they not answer based on their daily life?
Well, this kind of goes back to what we were talking about before. And if they are in a work frame of mind, or they're actually taking it at work, they may answer some questions differently than they might if they have what we would call in the type world as a shoes off approach. So taking your shoes off and answering as your true and natural self. And I'm sorry if there's noise here. Somebody decided to mow my grass outside.
Oh, I can
Just
hear it,
while
but
yeah.
that's okay. These are things we cannot prevent, predict. So.
Yeah, I know it's kind of like Murphy's Law. It happens right when we're doing the webinar, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So I think I understand what you're talking about, because naturally, which was more comfortable for me, I like to be able to have my alone time. And if, given that example, if you're at a party and you have the choice to talk in the corner with someone at length, or mingle in the middle of the room, I would be the one in the corner talking to someone at length. Whereas maybe at work, if I were thinking about the MBTI in terms of work setting, I would feel that I need to answer that I would be the mingler, especially if that were part of my job. And I asked people, why they do this, because, many do. They answer as if they were at work, and they say, because, I just feel that work is such an important part of my life, and that's how I feel when I'm working. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. And it might even be an unconscious thing that people are doing too. So.
Okay, I'm going to see if there have been any more questions.
Okay.
So Navjeet asked, why are the online tools for MBTI assessments not as valid? I think you mentioned that earlier.
They are not. They're not put together by the statisticians of the assessment. So the only way to get the true assessment is to purchase it. And even then, I mean, I think the value of that is having a conversation with somebody who can relate it to where you are right now and your needs right now.
Sure. So Oksana asked a good one. She says, if two people are on the opposite spectrums, can they get along well?
Oh, that's a really good question. So if you have if I'm an ENFP type, and can I work effectively with an ISTJ type, for example?
Right.
Absolutely, yes, is my answer to that.
Right.
Now, personalities aside, obviously there's going to be some people who, you just don't get on with for whatever reason, that has nothing to do with the Myers-Briggs type, right? But personally, I love to work with people who are my opposite, because they're looking at things in a completely different way than I would, and they might have a different viewpoint about something, and that can open my eyes to things too.
Sure.
The thing about working with people who are similar to you is, especially on that SN dichotomy, you connect easier. The more similar you are to someone else, the easier you can connect with someone. And when you connect easier, it might be easier to understand that other person. But
so with the sensors and the intuitives you're talking about.
Yes, well, not just that, but any of the four dichotomies, but in my opinion, especially the SN dichotomy.
Okay.
But with that said, someone who's very different from us, that's some of the greatest opportunities for growth, is by interacting and working with people who are very different from what we are.
True.
Yeah.
Conti asked, is it true that extroverts are energized by people, introverts are drained? Is that so?
So extroverts, let me answer that question this way. Extroverts' natural preference is externally. So extroverts tend to be energized by external stimuli, which includes people, things, and taking action. Introverts' natural tendency is to be energized internally. That doesn't mean that introverted types don't enjoy meeting people, interacting with people. And in fact, Bob, you just said this. You said you're an introverted type and you do enjoy interacting with people, preferably on a one-on-one basis.
Yep, absolutely. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah, and and my idea of a good-sized party would be 4 or 5 people.
Yeah,
Yours may be a little different, right?
we talked about this question yesterday, and
Yeah.
because I think it's just hilarious. I think this question is hilarious. It's, you can ask anybody, what do you think is a large party? What's your idea of a large party? And I asked Bob yesterday, and you said 4 or 5 people, right?
This is true. This is true.
And for me, I think I said 50. So yeah.
Yeah, and then I asked you, so you're having a birthday party and you're going to invite 50 people to your birthday party? Well,
maybe.
yeah.
I mean, it depends on how much space I can have. But to me, that's a large party. It didn't mean I would always enjoy going to a large party, but to me, 4 or 5 is a small party.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
David has a really good question, but I want to hold off until the next one on the slide, and that is, most people believe that extroverts make better leaders. What are your feelings on this?
My quick answer is absolutely not.
Right.
It's different types are going to bring different strengths to any leadership role. And in terms of the number of leaders out there as it correlates with Myers-Briggs type, we will find more leaders, more people who have TJ, thinking, judging types in leadership roles. And this is also pretty well documented too.
Mm-hmm.
And that is because of the natural inherent tendencies of people who have TJs in their preference. Bob, we lost your webcam, by the way.
Oh, okay. You can't see me?
Nope.
Okay, I'm still here.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure if that was intentional or not. So,
See me now?
but yeah, so we have ISTJ, INTJ, ESTJ, ENTJ.
Yeah.
These 4 types naturally rise towards leadership roles, and we will see more of these types in leadership roles.
Okay. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Now, that doesn't mean that they make better leaders or not. Actually, I have one of my podcasts. Actually, a lot of the questions that are being asked, I do have podcasts on pretty much all of these questions. And
Right.
I have a 2-part podcast on this one because it is a pretty common question. Which Myers-Briggs type make the best leaders? And the participants can find that on my site, topcareer.com, or on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. But as I like to say, there are 16 paths to leadership. There's 16
Right.
different types of leaders out there, and it depends on what's needed for the situation and what that person individually brings outside of type to that leadership role that would make them effective.
So in terms of leadership styles, do you think you can summarize the leadership style of an introvert or an extrovert? Or are there just too many variables to do that?
Well, I mean, the assumption would be that, extroverts may be seen as more overt, more expressive, more
Right.
visible in their leadership roles, while introverts may be seen as kind of more behind the scenes.
True.
But that's not necessarily true, because as people, gain balance in themselves throughout their careers, you realize that it's a fine line to walk. Like you have to do both. You
Mm-hmm.
do have to get out and interact with people and explain your decisions to people. You have to be in large forums and make formal presentations as a leader. Typically things that you might be seen as more extroverted qualities,
Right.
but you also have to spend a lot of time behind the scenes, interacting with people one-on-one, doing a lot of planning, a lot of analyzing data, things like that. So yeah, I don't think it's really so much about an either or in this case.
Okay. Okay.
Mhm.
So David asked, and let me see if I get this answer to this question. I had previously taken other personality assessments before taking the Myers-Briggs. My answers were in line with those other tests, but I found myself wondering if, when answering the questions, I was playing to the type, as in conforming to an expectation from the other test. Is this common? If so, how can you overcome that when you're when taking an assessment?
It's that's a hard one because there are some people who know quite a lot about personality
Right.
psychology or the theory
Mhm.
behind it, and that can affect the results there. So the real Myers-Briggs does have measures in place to account for that, and any psychometric should have that
Mhm.
should have that in there. So, um, however, there may be times when an individual, for whatever reason, answers a question in a way that is not natural for them, whether it's conscious or unconscious. I mean, I've met a lot of people, certain types, particularly, who, knowingly try to manipulate the results of an assessment. And my answer to that is, why would you do that? Why would you waste your time doing that? Because this assessment is really only intended to help you. So
Sure.
if somebody is concerned about that, it might be even better to read up on what the different types are, that are close to their true type, and then try to find out about type that way, or talk to somebody who's skilled in this area, who can
Right.
get to the bottom of it.
Well, I mean, I would have to admit that given the preference of being an introvert or an extrovert, I would choose to be an extrovert, but I don't have that choice. I mean, it's a preference and neither is right or wrong, but maybe that's what David's talking about. Maybe just wanting to be a certain type, convincing yourself through the self-assessment. So I get what David's talking about a little
Okay.
bit. Now,
Um,
go
mhm.
ahead.
If I can make a comment on that. So it's reminding me of a client I had a couple of years back who I
Yeah,
gave the assessment to, and she didn't like her type at all. And
right,
she
right.
said her first question was, Edythe, how can I change my type? And of course, I had the conversation with her. Why would you want to change your type?
Right, right.
And it came around to the fact that she thought it was not a strong type. She didn't think it was valued. And
Huh.
I asked her who are some leaders, some famous people who she aspired to be.
Right.
Named two of them, and wouldn't you know it, those two
They were
people
out
ended up
in her type.
being exactly,
Yeah.
yes, they were people who were reportedly her type.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I get that. I get that.
Yeah.
Let me see. There's one more. Michelle says, just curious if statistics show which few personality types are most common in the population.
Yes, this is well documented too. So the most common is ISFJ and ISTJ types is the most
Okay.
common. Hmm.
Oh, yes,
Yeah,
yes. When I'm scoring the MBTI forms, I do come across a lot of ISTJs. Yeah.
yeah. And that's usually it's important to note who the sample size is there. So that's in US and UK because they're often meshed together there. But
Yeah.
in other cultures or in other workplaces, it's going to be slightly different. But for US and UK as a population, ISTJ, ISFJ.
Are you going to get different results, say, if from a company, so like a country like Japan and say Brazil, will you get different results from those?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question because for that you need to have someone who's very culturally competent to go into these places,
Right.
especially when you're talking about a collective culture like Japan,
Hmm.
uh, where they'll answer that they're conditioned from a young age to behave a certain
Sure.
way.
Sure.
Uh, so yeah, you need to have a trainer going in there who's very understanding of that and can speak to those
Okay.
dynamics because that goes beyond anything the Myers-Briggs measures.
Right. Right.
Mhm.
Let me see. I think there's one more question. In terms of communications, is it true that extroverts talk more than introverts? And if so, why?
So I can answer it this way.
Use your words carefully now.
Extroverted types may be predisposed to talk more because they are energized externally. That doesn't mean that they always do.
Okay.
Uh,
Very
so
diplomatic
this,
way of saying that.
yeah, it goes to a conversation that I think you and I had
Mhm.
not too long ago about the way that brains are wired differently.
Right, right.
And extroverted brains and introverted brains are just wired differently.
Mhm.
And so extroverts are going to get those rewards from these particular neurotransmitters when they are in their extroverted world. And
Yeah.
it's the same with introverted types too.
Yeah, and actually you wrote a blog article for me, which is on my blog about this,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
how the brains are wired differently. And is it also true that for introverts, there's a little bit of a gap in terms of their thought process, and therefore it takes them a little longer to talk, maybe affecting their small talk abilities?
Yes. So the pathway to the brain is it's different for introverts and extroverts, and that absolutely plays into all of this too.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. Stephen asked, what does it mean if I got an even score of on one dichotomy? I scored 12 and 12 on the think and feeling. What does that mean?
Um, Normally that does not happen. And the assessment is written in such a way that I don't believe you're going to get anything that's smack dab in the middle. However, part of the whole assessment process is to go through it with an administrator as an added validity measure
Sure.
to determine, is if this is correct, essentially. And I have had many cases where people just say they are smack in the middle, or they say they're smack in the middle of when they just can't pick one or the other. And with the type theory, we say you want to move to the right. You err on the right side. Yeah.
Okay.
So in this case, that would be you err on the side of feeling. But for me, I don't believe that tells the whole story. There's a lot into that about I would being who I am, I would try to get to the bottom of that myself with that person.
So this one is a bit personal. Edythe, how, what is it? How has your ENFP type influenced your career choice and path?
My career choice and path?
Yes. How has your type
Well,
influenced your career path?
I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up, if that answers that question.
Same here.
um, we ENFP types are predisposed to, thinking the grass is always greener, or just
Hmm.
having these grand ideas, and ideas are kind of more um, interesting and fun than what the reality is. And so a lot of us do have starts and stops throughout our careers. I was very lucky myself to be raised in a family who provided a lot of grounding for me. I'm the only P in a family of J's, so I
Okay.
actually think that helped me to make good decisions for myself. that doesn't stop me from wondering, hey, what if I had taken this other path here? What if I had done that? Or, oh, maybe I could still be an actress one day. Who knows? Yeah.
Well, this is sort of similar. When trying to change careers, how important or helpful would you say it is to take the Myers-Briggs?
As a career changer. Yeah, I absolutely think it can be truly helpful for someone if it is explained correctly, and if it is used as a tool for building self-awareness, not to predict what career path you should go into. So, Myers-Briggs is just one piece of the pie in the whole career development process.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I believe there's one more. I think I said that the last time.
Yeah.
Right?
I think
So
we
when
kind
I
of
ask
already answered this question too.
So when I ask my workshop attendees if they think I'm an introvert or extrovert, unanimously they tell me I'm an extrovert. As you know, I'm an introvert. Why are they wrong?
People are going to make decisions based on what's visible in the external world. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're gonna kind of gravitate towards the noise, and I would imagine, you're very expressive in your workshops. You have a lot of information to share, so you're very comfortable with your information, and so that can come across as, oh, this guy's an extrovert, and it's a great example of using your extroverted qualities appropriately and effectively. But I will venture to say that after that workshop's over, you're ready to go home and take a nap or veg out or just be alone, right?
Well, maybe not take a nap, but retreat to my office or my cube and get on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I am curious, for those of you who are out there and know my colleague Stacy, whether you think she's an introvert or an extrovert. Raise your hand if you think she's an extrovert. Look at those hands shoot up. Oh my goodness. Oh, I wonder if Stacy's even voting. Almost every hand I see has gone up. Well, guess what? According to her, you're all wrong. She thinks she's an She has taken the assessment multiple times, and she has turned out to be an introvert. Now, I find that hard to believe myself, but in any case, that's what she says. Okay. So that is, in fact, the last question. But there are some others from the audience, and we have probably about 8 minutes if you can rush these answers in.
Okay.
Oh, I see. There's one. Don't know if you will be discussing blind spots in your presentation. I was wondering if you could give some suggestions on how to learn more about them to help improve professional skills. Have you ever helped someone work through their blind spots? So Lori asked that question, and what does she mean by blind spots?
So I know what she's talking about here. There's actually a whole other level to the Myers-Briggs, which is about cognitive functions.
Okay.
And the easiest way for me to describe this is to imagine that you're in a car, and in the driver's seat of the car, that's your dominant function. That's where you have the most control.
Okay, right.
Front seat passenger is your navigator, right? And that's your second favorite function. And by functions, we're only talking about the middle two letters of your Myers-Briggs type. Behind the driver, we have a teenager there. So they might think they're an adult, but they're not quite an adult. And then backseat passenger, you've got a screaming toddler there.
Yeah.
So blind spots by that are, by this, maybe what she's talking, I hope this is helpful. It's the cognitive functions that are in the back seat of your car. So they are the middle two letters that are not part of your Myers-Briggs type. So Bob, in your case, it would be intuition and feeling.
Right.
So in my case, it would be sensing and thinking, or in the back seat. So when we're talking about blind spots based on Myers-Briggs are going to be there, those functions there that can they can derail you if you let them, if you're not aware of them, and if you don't develop them appropriately. They're never going to be comfortable places to be, but once you get a handle on them, it's going to make your career path, the tasks you're trying to accomplish, it's going to make it a lot easier. So I often work with people on how to find better balance with those non-preferred functions. Yeah.
So let's say, for instance, a person is a thinker and she realizes that many of her employees are feelers. Would he then have to, or she then have to adjust her behavior, her attitude toward her employees in order to lead better?
Yes, I mean that would be helpful if she wants to get good results. If you want to get good results, especially in that situation, you really have to be attuned to the other person and speak and act in a way that they can best hear. And in doing so, you will get hopefully better results.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I've just got some comments about how they can't still see me. I'm sorry.
Well, I can see you now, Bob.
Okay, you can see me now.
Yeah, I sure can.
Brian brings up Malcolm Gladwell's book Outliers addresses that for those who may be interested. And maybe I didn't get this soon enough because maybe you were talking about some topic, but do you understand what he's saying? Have you read the book?
I've heard of the book. I haven't. Honestly, okay. I haven't read it. I've read Blink, but not that one. Yeah. But I've heard of it. I guess I better read it. Yeah.
Have you read The Tipping Point?
Oh goodness, yes.
Oh, you have?
Yeah.
yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Stephen asked, where can I take the MBTI assessment? Well, you can take it here, Stephen, free of charge. We do not do a one-on-one assessment like Edythe would, but we do a workshop called the MBTI, or wait, it's changed its name, Knowing Your Personality, in which we talk about where you'll feel more comfortable in terms of work setting and how to better communicate with people. So you just need to come in here, and I'm sorry you can't take your shoes off to do this like you suggest. But you do know now, audience, that you do know that you need to take it as if you are thinking about your daily life, not in terms of how you would think at work.
Don't overthink it. Don't
overthink it. Right. And whenever I see someone doing it at a table, I'm like, don't think too hard, just answer it. But,
just answer it. Yeah, because it's a forced choice, and it's forcing you to choose A or B, and that's kind of the reason, because it's basically when it's scored, it's prioritizing your choices.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now we got to leave pretty soon, but I do want to say, if I haven't said it earlier, that the PDF for this presentation is downloadable. I don't know if that's a word, but if you want to download it, you can go to the right where you see the link for it. Please do that now. I usually remind people to do it at the beginning. And the links that you see in the PDF are all active. So for instance, on this page right here, if you want to go to Edythe's website, then you would just click on Top Career. If you wanted to go to where she has her podcast listed, then you just click on Podcast. That one's working. Okay.
Oh, good.
You see that? Okay. And then also at the beginning, there were a number of other links that you may want to, check out. One of them happens to be my blog, but in any case, you see here that Edythe has, 52 episodes of her podcast. I've watched many of them. They're very, very good. She's an eloquent speaker, and it's very professionally done. What did you just recently get nominated or mentioned for your podcast, Edythe?
I don't know.
Okay. Well, you got nominated for me.
We just finished 52 weeks.
Yes.
So
yes.
And can I point out also that I have 2 series on Myers-Briggs. One is Myers-Briggs Question Corner, which is what you pulled up here,
Yeah.
which is where I get content from listeners and other people who write in or call me and ask a question related to Myers-Briggs. And
Okay.
I'm always looking for content. So if anybody out there does have a specific question about Myers-Briggs, I'd love to be able to answer it for you on air. But I also have another podcast series called MBTI for Midlife Career Changers. And there's 16 episodes of that, and it's one for each type. So when we have somebody who is thinking about changing careers and they do know their Myers-Briggs type, it's spoken to that person's type and things that type may want to think about if they are changing careers.
Okay, so I didn't get to many questions, and I'm really sorry to Stephen, Pamela, Anna, and Nicole. I'm sorry we didn't get to your questions, but it is time for us to depart. And I really wanted to thank Edythe for taking this time to talk about the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, sort of, demystify some of the stereotypes that I have of it, some of the untruths, if you would. Edythe, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You're always don't offer to have you again. I'll probably take you up on it. But in any case, thank you so much. And you're just a valuable asset and resource to the community that needs to know about the MBTI. So that's what we have for today, folks. I appreciate you watching, and I don't know if we reached 99 attendees, but I was hoping for it. I think the last time I looked, we were at 95. 99 is the limit that we can hold, but thank you all so very much. You were great. As it turns out, so many of you have some questions that we didn't get to. I'm really sorry about that. But Edythe, thank you so much.
Email me. They can email me. They can email me questions if you have one. But I'm glad to respond.
Okay, but please, before you sign off, make sure that you download the PDF. I should have mentioned this earlier, but please do that. And everyone have a great day. We're signing off.
See ya. Oh, gosh.